Thank you for joining us here at the Vineyard as we have our worship service at NCC. We'll be starting shortly. If you were with us last Sunday, we had a service, a blessing. So we blessed people and prayed for people and ministered to people. We shared words as we also finished up the Feast of Tabernacles as on that Sunday part of it. But we ministered and engaged with each other. It was a beautiful service. This Sunday, I want to talk about our battles and knowing our battles and where our battle should be. So today we're going to discuss thoroughly about our battles, where to battle, when to battle, and what our battles are. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy today's service. I'd like to welcome you today into the house of the Lord. It is good to be here. Before we get started, I'd like to give condolences to all of Sister Melena's family. I'm glad that you showed up on this difficult time in your life. She unexpectedly passed this past week. It's been a challenging time for the family. This is a third sister to pass in 6 months. 6, 7 months, three sisters, not that old in age. We actually mentioned the other two last week, and we will also weave in some of that because we misunderstand priorities many times and we misunderstand the severity of other people's lives. What that's called is lack of empathy. As we heard in announcements, Brother Paul mentioned a family that Brother Larry Kisner had passed, and they came to meet with me, and they were just so thankful and grateful for our open arms. And inside of myself, I just wanted to say, how can we not? Not how can we? How can we not? How can we not? The least we can do, that's all I wanted to tell them, the least we can do, because they're in pain. It's the most devastating moment of their lives. And if we can't stand in there, why are we even opening the doors at all? Why are we even speaking in a microphone? Why, if we can't be there for hurting people like that, then we miss the mark totally. I don't care that we can quote the whole Bible, theologians backwards and forwards, and we can outfast and outpray anybody. It doesn't matter if we don't have empathy, as the Bible would call it, charity or agape. So, anyways, we give condolences to the family. We thank everybody for helping us to fill that gap. And I just believe it should allow us to open our eyes, our hearts, our ears to be more sensitive to that which is around our lives. The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, a familiar portion of Scripture, starting with the first verse. If you don't know it, you will know it because it's well quoted. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. You may be seated. As I mentioned, the two passings, Sister Milena, Brother Larry, uh, my family has also, we lost the last surviving uh, person in my mother's father's, my maternal grandfather's generation. My Aunt Lupe just passed away. I could say my mom's aunt, she's would be my great aunt. It turns out her services are being held at the same time as uh, Brother Larry's. Could you see stuff that happens to people's lives? I'm not saying this because we're defeated. That's not what I mean. I was speaking to an individual this week and uh, going over some stuff in his life. And he's just broken. And he told me some things reflecting back to my life. And he tells me, he just says, when you walk in, he says, when you walk in a room, he goes, you just bring a love. He goes, there's a love with you. And hear me, this is not a weak man. This is a very strong man. We're a very well-known man, but he's like, you just walk in, you walk with love. And I'm just hearing him because I'm hearing from his perspective of what he's taking in. But his life, when I'm hearing it, that is what's important in his life. The passing of these individuals, for some people, this is the most devastating time of their life, their whole life. And I know I've shared this, but I've had this happen numerous times where something tragic happens, and as I'm dealing with that, because I'm dealing with it. So I have this family, and they come over here, and they're in tears. And Brother Larry's wife, she just kept hugging me and telling me, thank you, thank you, thank you. And in my thoughts, it is that. Is there not a cause? Is it time for me to be upset because someone shot my window in my office? True story. I'll just give this example. I know I've mentioned it, but I had an emergency surgery on a Sunday. So surgery was about 7:30 in the morning. Obviously, I didn't make it to church. So I wasn't at service to take care of some business, which I would have thought that would have been pardonable, right? I thought it would be excusable. I was literally out. I was out, put under. I was probably in the middle of church. I came to. I didn't know till years later, but while I was in there after church was dismissed, my wife gets a phone call. She didn't tell me about it till years later, but it went straight to the business. No, hi, how are you? How's Pastor doing? Just straight to the business. because I wasn't there to handle it. Now, would I have handled it when I came to my mind? Yes. I wouldn't have had amnesia. But she walks differently than I do. So she's like, hey, 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 pump the brakes, slow your roll. Can you say hello? Can you say, how's your pastor doing? You just told me all you care about with that sentence. You told me it's all about your world. You don't even know his condition. You don't even know what we're going through. Now, was I dying? No, but it wasn't known. Why am I sharing that? Because that is a reflection of lack of empathy. And I have had moments where I received news that somebody passed, and everybody knew that I have received news. That's not the moment to address certain issues. And didn't we go over it last Sunday? What did I say? It's not the time to crack jokes. Remember? Did we know that was going to all happen the coming week? Right? Brother Matthew, I'm glad you walked through them doors. I know that you're hurting, but I knew that this family understands something. Now's not the time to miss church. Now's the time. What better place to be? But what kind of man am I going to be? Am I going to be empathetic? Am I going to be sensitive? Am I going to be considerate? And I said this last week when people are against mourning now, right? It says there is a time to mourn and there's a time to laugh. Didn't it say that? It says there's a time to mourn and there's a time to laugh. There's or time to mourn, a time to dance. There's a time to speak. There's a time to keep silence. Today, the last part said there's a time to war and there's a time to keep peace. One of the most challenging decisions that you have in your life is to know what time it is. When it's time to speak, to know when to speak and what to speak, but to know when there's a time to keep silence. When there is a time to embrace and there's a time to refrain from embracing. But the last part, when there's a time to war and there's a time to keep peace. If we don't know what time it is, we're guaranteed to lose. We lose. We already lose when we don't know what time it is. And I shared those stories because those are incidents of not knowing what time it is. See, in victory, it doesn't reveal who we are. It's in adversity that it shows who we are. Adversity shows if we know what time it is. And what is adversity? The challenge. When it's difficult, when it's hard, when it's painful, how do we respond? Because it's easy to respond when it's a wedding, when it's a buffet, when it's an anniversary, when it's a birthday party, when it's Thanksgiving and the table's full of food. That's an easy time. It could be challenging, I get it. But adversity is different. Adversity how do we respond? I was thinking about this prior to these incidents happening, but I know I've shared I'm the youngest of three boys brought up in a tough environment as far as being strong. My dad didn't ask us to be strong, he demanded us to be strong. My mother is strong. But we would experience adversity, and I was the youngest, and I was the baby. And I remember this at a young age. When adversity hit, the outward toughest brother of mine, the outward toughest, the one that brawled the most, would be the first one to start crying and go to his room. And I remember that as a young boy. My oldest brother was more reserved, but he'd come to tears and he'd walk off. And I was the baby, I was the little one. And at times, being in the living room when we went through some things, I'd look around, I'm like, what happened, guys? That's what went through my head. Now, I was the younger one, so they were more mature, they were more advanced. But in time, things have changed. But I think you don't have to know me that well to know I talk to animals, I befriend them, I feed them, I talk to little children I don't know. Um, if I see someone at the store that may be struggling physically to get help, I've been that way. Some people consider it soft. Some people consider it weak. Uh, I'm not looking to change it. I think I probably will stay that way, probably till I leave this earth. Uh, my wife's grandmother, when she was passing, uh, uh, we were living together. She was in her last years, and she used to tell her, "Está loco. He talks to cats." She would tell him that she would tell her, "He's crazy. He talks to cats." Well, in her last days, guess what she was doing? She was talking to my cat. In her last times of her life, because my cat would go stay with her because that's what cats do when you're sickly. And in her last days, she was conversating with the cat. And I could tell story after story. Why am I saying this? Because people mistake strength and weakness. I'm not saying my biological brothers are weak because they're very strong in their ways. It's just that I would get misunderstood. And my whole life, I'd roll around. Someone brought a puppy, forget it. I was on the ground with the puppy rolling around. It didn't have to be mine. Whatever it is, jumping around, playing, being a child. But people can misread being sensitive, being empathetic, being considerate. And I watch it happen. There's a reason that I know and I've understood this is real strong men draw to me. Real strong men, not fake strong men. Fake strong men don't like me. I'm just saying that. If you're a fake strong man, they don't like me. But real strong men, they like me. And I've learned this because they look at me and say, I can be vulnerable to this guy. And what do I mean? That they look and say they can be vulnerable And I'm not going to judge them. They can sense it. They can feel it. Whereas a fake strong man can't be vulnerable lest you see through the facade. But a real strong man, he's like, no, I'm broken. I'm hurting. Can you help hold up my arm for me? Can you pray for me? And understand the difference. But knowing when it's time to war and knowing how to war and knowing when it's time to walk in peace. Knowing that when the water needs to be calmed, that you're the one that knows how to calm them. You can calm the waters. We say, what about Jesus? Well, we know Jesus calmed the waters. But didn't he show us? Didn't he show us? Now, he calmed the literal seas. And they're like, who is this man that even the sea obeys him? But you can calm your figurative seas. You can. Or you can throw fuel on the fire and make it worse. A soft answer turneth away wrath. A soft answer turneth away wrath. Knowing how to war, knowing when to war, knowing when to have peace, how to make peace. The Bible says it this way. Those of you that have been around a long time know this because you were brought up with it. They would say, without holiness, no man shall see the Lord. They would say that, but that's not what it says. It says, without holiness and peace with all men, you shall not see the Lord. I like to emphasize and peace. Now, can you make other people walk in peace? No, but you can walk in peace. You can be the one that calms the waters. When you walk through these doors, when you walk through the doors of your home, when you walk through the doors of your workplace. Now, what about war? Do I know how to war? Have I warred? In fact, I hide my war lest I scare somebody. But to me, war is not the people out here shooting my window and knocking over plants and breaking the window on my car. That's not my war. Why? You afraid of them? And someone help me. Am I afraid of them? What am I afraid of? I'm afraid of myself. You didn't catch that. So it's better that I just let Leo, Minister Ross, somebody else deal with it. Why? Because I'm going to lose control? No. It's not my war. Does it inconvenience my life? I got to call someone to come fix the window on the vehicle. Now we got to fix this big old window in the office. Get another. So what? It's better that than me lose the war. Not knowing what the real war is. Because here's where I'm going to war. And you got to stay with me here, especially you men. This is the war. If you can't, this is the war. Do I need to explain it? I will if I do or not. The war is on our knees. Not with our knees that we're giving up, on our knees that we're warring in prayer. Warring is getting a hold of God, is the war, in the sense that we're battling through when we don't feel like it, when life has punched us, when life has kicked us in the gut, when we don't have the answer, we don't know the answer, we don't know where to turn. That's the war. But if I put the war on one of these individuals, guess what happens? I lose. I lose. There was a time King David and his men were riding their horses, and another man who was, his allegiance was to King Saul, and this was years past King Saul's death. He starts throwing rocks, and he says pelting in one of the versions. They're hitting. This man's hitting David, King David, and hitting his men with rocks. And he's saying, "You're a scoundrel. You're a murderer." He's yelling that and throwing rocks at David. And one of David's men says, "I'm going to go over there and I'm going to take his head off." And he didn't mean that he was going to kill him. He was going to take his head off for throwing rocks and calling him names. This is what David said. And this goes right along with the whole thing I've been telling you. He says, "My son Absalom wants to kill me." Do you think I'm worried about this guy? At that time, his son was trying to take his kingdom. And they wanted to kill King David. They were trying to kill him. And King David says, "You think someone throwing rocks at me," he's telling him, "is my priority?" And he's like, "Let them throw rocks at me." And David says, "How do I not know that that's the Lord speaking to me?" That's what he says. Maybe it's the Lord telling me to hear that these people speak down to me, and he's calling him a murderer. I don't know what he's exactly referring to. If he's referring to Uriah, if he's blaming him for King Saul's death, for other death, whatever, which one it was, King David was like, "Let it be what it is. I'm a scoundrel. I'm a murderer in his eyes. I'm not defending myself. I'm not defending the verbal attack, and I'm not defending the physical attack." And he points it out to his soldier. "My own son wants to kill me. What do you think I'm more concerned about right now?" Do you see this? Because King David understood, if I focus on the rock throwing and the name calling, I'm going to be distracted. Because I have to keep my focus where it belongs. And you have to keep your focus where it belongs. See, the wisdom, this is where wisdom comes in, though. Do you know where it belongs? Do you know where it belongs? Because you only have a certain amount of energy. You only have a certain amount of capacity in your mind. Where and what are you going to use it on? Your thoughts are important. Your energy is important. Where do you spend your thoughts? Where do you spend your energy? Because if we're worried about the rock throwers and the name callers, we're going to miss the big fight. We're going to miss the big battle. And a family loses a loved one, and we're disconnected. What about me? What about my nail got cut back too short? I know that sounds almost ridiculous, but people will do that. Somebody is dealing with something great, and somebody else has to come up and make it about, they say hangnails, but that's what it is. They didn't get my food right. I got served last. I asked for a refill and they didn't bring it. Thank you. Because some people, you can't even go eat with them. Because they're going to war with the waiter and waitress no matter what. I need to send this back. And he said, this isn't done right. Did you see she didn't give me a refill? What's the next line? I'm not tipping her. And I'm thinking, you already planned on tipping. You're just waiting. But some people, they're gonna find a war. If there is no war, they'll find a war. They'll make a war. Go to Walmart and they're arguing with the clerk, and it's like, oh my gosh. I'm changing lines. This says $3.99. Over there, it says $3.95. Here's a nickel. Keep moving. Jockeying for a parking spot. And I'm looking, I'm like, wait a second. That spot to that spot is like 5 steps. You know what my other favorite thing is? You go to the gym and these big, strong men parking in the handicap spot. I'm like, what's with that? You're going to the gym. You're going to exercise, and you need to have the closest space. You know what that to me is evidence of? It's not a strong man. Jockeying to have the better parking spot. Is that your war? Any of you have been honked at? Been honked at? Anyone been told you're number one? Happens. It's not my war. So I'm going to tell you this real quick. I know I've told you, I'm going to say it again. Green doesn't mean go. Green doesn't mean go. Don't let anyone tell you green means go. Green means you can go if it's clear. But how many times does this happen? You're sitting at the light turns green, the other light is dead red. It's not yellow, it's red. And a car comes shooting through. So when that light turns green, I don't go. I make sure that the intersection clears through. Guess what happens? I get told sometimes I'm number one. Or it's half a peace sign. I'm not sure. And they lay in the horn, and I'm sitting there going, you don't know the war, do you? The other day, I was coming out of the road. Light turned green. The other light was red. Some young guy just comes bolting through. Another car didn't do what I did. It comes out. But the guy shot to the other side going the wrong way. That was his way to avoid it. It did avoid the accident. But if another car was coming this way, it would have been a head-on. I sat there, not because I predicted it. It was just my habit. But I'm sitting there going, if I didn't have that habit, and it's not one time I've witnessed. I've seen in East Mesa. I've seen boom happen recently. Saw the collision because somebody didn't pause with the green and somebody ran the red. And what do people do? They honk the horn when you don't move, not realizing. I'm not trying to scare you, but that's a 2,000-pound vehicle moving at a good clip of speed. It can hurt your life, damage your life. And what will somebody do? Honk at you. And I'm liking that to the throwing rocks. That's what I'm liking it to. It's a rock throw. I don't like that horn. I believe they should invent something like a little tweet. Like just a little nice thing. Maybe I'll say a meow. Okay? Now, horn has its place, but it's not for that. But what I'm saying is to know your war. Because you're going to get tempted. You're going to get provoked. Oh, well, you guys look so sweet. And you guys are making me come up and say, it's you. But I don't buy it. You go through it too. You get pushed in the chest. You get challenged. And the sweetest one of you has another side too. Belinda's shaking her head no.